So something happened that was you wanted to ask me about?
Yeah, so one thing that really kind of surprised me in, I think it was a reading I had with you. We were meditating, I was doing an exercise, and you asked me to feel what I was feeling, and in the moment, I didn't feel anything. Or at least I wasn't aware of what I was feeling. I wasn't conscious of it. And something shifted, and you asked me, "Are you sure you didn't feel bored for a second there?" And I was like, "Whoa, yeah, you're right. I kind of did feel bored. Like, when is this gonna be over? This is pointless." But it was a super subtle feeling that I wasn't aware of until you pointed that out, and I went, "Whoa, okay." So, what is that super subtle feeling? Is that just me being so, I guess, shut down that, like, when you develop awareness, is that a more prominent feeling? Is that a stronger feeling?
It is, and I hesitate to say you were so shut down because that feels so self-critical.
Okay.
Instead, we're in a Western culture that we don't work with energy. We don't work with mysticism. The New Age industry, I don't even know if they do, because when you start feeling those really subtle energies that are always working on us, like, in some of the religions, they say God whispers. And it's true, because otherwise we're in a cult being told what to do. So to me, spiritual energies, spirit, whoever you work with, is always right there saying, hey, don't trust that person. Make a left turn, go in that store. Like 24/7. But we're not listening most of the time. And the whispers come in, so we are given the opportunity to hear it, and we have a choice whether we want to listen and a choice whether we want to follow. But can you imagine if you heard this voice? This happened to me once. I was going back to see an old boyfriend who was a drunk, and I broke down to, I'll just go see him. I went to see him, and he passed out drunk on the floor. And this is before I was really into spirituality. This was one of the things that brought me in. I heard a voice like from a movie, like Moses. Leave now. And I'm like, what? It was crazy. And then I thought, oh, that's just some crazy shit. And I was sober. I'd never been a drunk. Drugs, yes, but not a drunk. And then I heard the voice again, like parting the Red Sea. Leave now. And I got up and got the hell out of there. And a couple of days later, I found out that he had actually earlier gone to my house drunk with a gun and was going to kill my dog.
Whoa.
And for some reason didn't. And so he was obviously in a really dark place, and I was supposed to be with him. And there was spirit not giving me much of a choice. And I was so out of it that I had to have this sort of psychic phenomenon happen to me. But that can't be how our life is run, because then I'd just be following this voice all the time. Yes, master, what do I do now, right? And now I'm a zombie. And now I'm not beginning to feel what's going on with me naturally. So in the beginning, a lot of people, when they come into this kind of meditation, say they feel nothing. And I'll often ask them, well, do you feel nothing like floating on a pond? Do you feel nothing like people are talking and you're bored? Do you feel nothing like you're waiting for something to happen? So I'll give them 5 or 10 nothings, and suddenly they realize nothing is also something. It's not nothing. There's like all these different nothings. So now they find that nothing they're feeling, and now they find out they're actually feeling something. You're not feeling nothing ever unless you're dead.
Okay.
Right? But where are you in a place that you're asked that question? You need to cultivate that. It's a survival skill, which it isn't anymore unless you're an indigenous person living off the land. So that's a waking up process. And after a while, what happens, usually you'll go through a period of hypersensitivity. Like you start to feel those things and now you feel everything. And that's really overwhelming. You walk in a room and you feel everybody's vibes. Empaths complain about this all the time. I feel everything. Then if you continue having a spiritual practice, you get strong enough that it's background, like the fan is going. Right now I could be sitting here going, oh, that damn fan. It's eating me alive with its energy, right? But the fan's in the background. Why? Because I can hold focus now. I can be here with me. Everybody's feelings, their thoughts, their energies are in the background. And it took me years to get to that place. So typically I see people, they kind of wake up, they start feeling things, they go through a period of a little overwhelm. If they continue with a good spiritual practice, at that point when they feel the overwhelm, some people drop out, some people start drinking, some people will self-medicate with weed or other things. But the ones who stick it out, they learn to get strong enough that they can tune in to the stuff they want to feel, and then they can put it in the background. And that's why in this kind of meditation, we always go back to the breath, because that's teaching us to shift focus. Bring it home. Bring it home. When I'm home, I'm solid. From here, I can reach out and feel things, and I won't get overwhelmed.
Makes sense. Okay.
So since that time, what happened to you after that, in the days that followed?
After that, with more practice and meditation, I feel like sometimes I definitely do, I can identify the feelings and I can talk about them, and other times I can't. And I was thinking maybe like in a scenario where I can't pinpoint what I'm feeling, if you were to tell me what I was feeling, I know that's kind of not what you like to do, but I was just remembering that time that I didn't know to look for that. So when you pointed it out, I went, oh, okay, now I see that was there. So it was just
but
an
haven't
idea.
there been times that I've asked you questions that helped you discover what you were feeling?
Probably, yeah.
Because I know there were other times when you said nothing, and I would ask you what kind of nothing, and then you found the nothing that was actually a something.
Okay.
Right? So it's very impressive to tell people things, and it gets you better business.
But not for you to be impressive, though. I know.
Right. I mean, I want you to be able to find this stuff yourself, and then I'm here to validate it for you. To say, yes, I think you are feeling that, and aren't you also feeling a little this? So now I'll add a little bit more.
Right, yeah, you definitely
And then
do that.
you'll go, yes, that too. But you already did some work. You already dug in a little bit. So you're developing muscles. It's kind of like a child is learning to take first steps. So you let them take a step or two, and then you grab their hands and help them more. But you want to teach them how to try. So the whole idea to me of being a good teacher is to become obsolete, unfortunately. Not good for business.
Yeah.
The whole idea is to teach you how to learn and validate yourself, and how to be willing to explore and discover on your own, and trust your intuition on all of that. So it's a fine balance between asking you questions so you discover, and then validating so you feel confident and comfortable.
Yeah, totally. And that's really, really cool that you do that, because not a lot of people are like that.
It's a lot more fun to impress. Trust, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, wow, you're right. And I'm like,
Yeah.
but that's a dark tunnel, man. That is a dark path to go down.
Yeah, that's good to know. Yeah, I just thought maybe more, like when I can, if you were to point out more things every now and then, maybe that would help, but maybe not. Maybe it is just more about the practice. So I trust your judgment 100%.
Yeah, and it's a good question, and I'm always asking myself, do more, do less. It's I think if you're helping people, or using your intuition, you always have questions. When you start getting super sure, again, to me, you can be easily manipulated.
Yeah.
I think that way. But if I'm always going, feels like this, so it feels like the right choice, feels like the right path, let me take a few steps and see how that's going. And as I take those steps, I'm checking in inside. How does it feel? How does it feel? How does it feel? Because there's a lot of people out there these days manipulating, and social media is manipulating. So to me, we need a really strong core, and we need to slow down. And even if I think, oh, this is a sign, okay, then it's not going to go anywhere. There's no rush. So why not go at it like it's a frozen pond? Or is there any spots with some thin ice? Let me take some steps and see how each step feels. And if it feels a little strange, let me slow it down again. Now, maybe in an emergency, it might be a little bit different. But in day-to-day, trusting your intuition and getting like psychic phenomena happening, as soon as people tell me they have a method, they have an answer, they have a way, and they're very positive, I know they're in business. Mm-hmm. My own teacher, we had a workshop here a few years ago, and somebody who had not worked with me but knew me came. And I didn't know it, but she was setting herself up in business, healing centers, psychic, all that. So somebody asked my teacher, Leong, something, and he thought about it, and he goes, I really don't know the answer to that. Now, this guy's been doing this work forever. He's phenomenally psychic, incredible energy master, 83 years old, doing it since he's a kid, really. And I thought, wow, great. And we're in a class too, so, maybe it isn't the time to get into just this person. So the person who came to the class pipes up and goes, well, I can answer that question. And she answers the question.
Wow.
So my jaw's on the floor. Leon doesn't react. But later he says to me afterward, and then she didn't come back.
Okay.
Because she figured out she knew more than my teacher, because she knew the answer and he didn't. What kind of teacher is that doesn't know the answer? That's the New Age perspective.
Hilarious.
And Leon said to me later, he said, that's never happened to me. I said, welcome to the neighborhood I live in, where everybody's a New Age guru and everybody has an answer always. It was in the Asian culture so disrespectful and such an inappropriate power play. I mean, she could have waited till after the class and gone up to the person at lunch and said, that question you asked? But no, she did it in front of the teacher, in front of everybody.
Yeah.
And it was wild. And I went, oh, she's in business. And she is. So I think it's good to always be humble and always be willing to ask questions and always be sure to test the waters, go in a little bit at a time and keep checking in here. Now, if you don't have a big practice, then you don't know how to check in here. You just know how to check in out there.
Mm-hmm.
And actually that same person, the one thing Wang Lo said to her was, he said something like, forgive me for saying this, because I guess he knew she wanted to be a big teacher. He said, you don't really spend a lot of time with yourself, meaning you don't have a meditation practice.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, yeah, I need to do that. Right?
But
it's different. New Age and business, and I'm sure she's making a lot more money than I am.
Yeah.
And has staff by now, and she's selling, I do know she's selling a lot of products.
Yeah, it wasn't a deal breaker for her.
And she has answers.
Yeah.
And people want answers. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the wiser people have more questions than answers.
And in a crisis, I will give someone an answer. Like, is this, is my job secure? And like, they're going to get fired the next day. I might say, not really. Like, I'll help you in an emergency. I will throw you a life preserver. But if you're in a space where you can develop, that's my first choice. Help you develop.
Love that.
and hate it at the same time.
Yeah, I bet that's tough. It's not very.
I do too. You know, my own teacher, he'll say things and I want to wring his neck. Just tell me.
Yeah.
His answer to me about that is always, be patient. And I really want to wring his neck.
Yeah. That's tough. I'm glad I outgrew that a little bit. I was very answer hungry before, and then I chilled out and realized you don't need to be in a rush. Everything is going with the flow as it should be.
If you're in the process, you realize you're learning each step of the way, and the process is changing you. So by the time you get to the solution, you're a different person than when you first asked the question. But if you're looking for the answer, you're going to get to the solution unchanged. And the solution isn't going to work so well then. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
But we in the West, we don't have a lot of patience. You know, we want to get it done.
Yeah.
We want to multitask. We want to be powerful and busy and all of that. But what I've seen is I'll ask a question about my life, like what the heck is going on? And then I just let it keep going. And I've changed so much that what I wanted to happen when I first asked that question, I no longer care if that happens. And now I'm really curious to see what will happen. So now I'm teachable.
Yeah.
But when I first asked the question, I wasn't. I wanted an answer, God damn it, because I'm upset, I'm afraid, I'm anxious, I'm insecure.
Yeah.
But if I can slow down and go through the process, what's actually happening when I ask that question? How do I feel? What's happening the next day? Wow, I'm different. Wow, that question doesn't have the same meaning for me anymore. Now, the universe, source, spirit can give me a different outcome.
And that's what a real practice looks like.
To me, but it's very traditional, Eastern, First Nations people, Indigenous people. It is not Western.
Yeah, here we like to get it done and get there when life is about the journey, right?
Tell me what to do so I can get over here, because God told me this is where I should be with more money and a better husband or wife and a better job. You know, tithe the church, because then you will get more income coming in, because that's what Jesus said. Tell Jesus your sins and you are absolved, and now you can go back and do bad things again, and you'll go back to Jesus and tell him, and he died on the cross for your sin. So it's all cause and effect, cause and effect. There's no progress, there's no transformation, there's no metamorphosis there. These are the rules to get this. That's religion, that's cult also. And we are a very religious culture. We're not very spiritual culture. And the New Age grew out of our culture. So the New Age has also become a religious institution. It's just New Age now instead of Jesus.
Yeah.
It's crystals instead of tithing.
Just another religion.
Do this so you can intend and manifest, so you can get the job. You can move to Sedona. You can open up a healing center, etc. Same principles as religion. And all the New Age people are going to hate me for saying all of this, but oh well, it's just my opinion.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's so unhealthy.
I don't like it. You know, some people like it. Some people like religion. Bless them. Not for me. Not for me.
I agree with you there. What about, why do people consult psychics, and what are the pros and cons of getting readings?
Really good question. I have worked on psychic hotlines a few times, and it's gruesome for me. It's very, very sad. You're supposed to build a clientele, and as you build a clientele and you have regulars, then you get more money. And I even had a psychic tell me, I've had more than one person in the New Age businesses tell me, at the very end of a session, say something that's a cliffhanger, and then oops, our time is over, and either the phone disconnects, or I even had a friend who was a massage therapist who did readings and energy work while she was doing the massage, and she would tell them something as they were getting dressed at the end, as they were walking out the door. And I said, why? And she said, because they come back, not just for the massage. And she was booked 6 months in advance. And she was a great masseuse, and she did great readings, but she also had a business mind.
Yeah.
And I don't have a business mind, so I suck at that. Also, I found that people who call the hotlines they're addicts. I'd have one person call every few months who was dating Asian women on a dating site. Is this the woman for him? He was going to marry an Asian woman. Is this the right one? Those were always the readings. And all the readings were about relationships, money, and career. And they weren't always a crisis. It wasn't always like, realize I'm an anorexic and I'm dying and what should I do? It was more, how do I get what I want? How do I get what I want? The addiction to that, which is the Western culture. So I found it repetitive and exhausting and so sad, because it was like, I don't know, it's like having a puppy that would constantly run and jump into the pool to find out they couldn't swim, and then I'd pull them out of the pool, and then they'd dry off and run and jump in the pool again. It was that over and over and over and over. Now, can psychic readings be helpful? Yeah, I think so. The kind of readings I like are the ones that tell me the challenges that are coming up so I can prepare. And in fact, here in Yucaipa, I did readings for 2 brothers in an acupuncture center, and they're from Korea. So I told them both, what was coming, and it was actually good news for both of them. And the one brother was like, okay, great, and he walks away. The other brother said, where are the challenges? He said, I don't need to hear the good news. That's easy to handle. He says, I need to hear the challenges, because that's where you learn and grow. That's when life gets interesting. And I just laughed. I said, oh, that's so Asian. You've obviously not been assimilated into the Western culture.
Is that how Asians are?
Yes.
Oh.
Okay, I'm generalizing, because Asians are everything from people in India.
Yeah.
But let me say the Eastern cultures, if they have not been Westernized, yes.
Wow.
That's the path, which is, what's the next mountain I'm going to climb? Here we do like Ironman and triathletes, but Eastern spirituality and indigenous cultures and First Nation cultures, spiritually they do triathletes. Like, what's the next spiritual challenge? What's the next thing my soul has to learn to get stronger? What's going to make me even more intuitive and more in touch with Mother Earth, with my soul, with my life path? What's the next one? And then when life is good, the challenge is, how do I not get seduced and get fat and lazy? Rather than, I've made it, ta-da, and I'm here. It's more like, how do I stay on my path? Because when everything is easy and good, we can get distracted and we lose focus on the path. Kind of like when you're in a marriage and you get lazy in your marriage and you stop appreciating each other, you stop having great sex, you stop having it be exciting and interesting and new. And that's often when people start cheating, or one of the mates gets fat, or the sex life dies. It's a really different way of living life. So psychic readings, I love them. I love what I call life path readings. This is something mainstream psychology can't do. Mainstream psychology can give us tools to work with our psyche and with our mind. But mainstream psychology can't say, you're doing everything right. It's just your karmic path, your life path, the one you planned before you came here, is going to kick your ass for the next 5 years. So let's talk about how to get through that. And that is what I call psychic readings also. Psychic readings are also like what happens in the class where, for example, you discovered you actually were feeling something. We can maybe call that empathy, or being an empath, or being telepathic, but I also put that under the umbrella of psychic, to be able to pick up things that exist on another plane. Super helpful. But a psychic reading will not help you with depression. or anxiety or fear or chronic complex trauma.
Yeah, so if people have that, like say if someone wanted to be more like face challenges more and grow in that way rather than just accomplish in a Western way, do the trauma and problems that people have when they're younger, does healing that, or I guess what I'm trying to say is that like a major cause of people not wanting to challenge themselves and take the easier path when they are kind of traumatized or have those deeper
It can
issues?
be, yeah, it can be. I mean, a lot of people, if they have unresolved trauma, self-medicate with food. I mean, we have an obese culture now.
Yeah.
With sugar, one of the most highly addictive drugs on the planet, more so than probably anything. With alcohol, with tobacco still, with weed. So yeah, if you unresolved trauma, you will very often head for self-medicating, and usually people get out of that when they do what AA calls bottoming out. In other words, something so bad happens that it stops you in your tracks and you finally wake up and go, this isn't working. Overeating isn't working. Eating sugar isn't working. Being a workaholic isn't working. And everybody has a different bottom. Some people have to gain 300 pounds and end up in a wheelchair with COPD and obesity and diabetes before they go, wait a second, something's wrong.
Yeah.
Other people wake up by having a bout of depression. So yes, those things can cause a lot of problems, and typically also if you've had a lot of trauma in childhood, it woke up your psychic senses also, because to survive domestic violence or alcoholism in the home, or even severe poverty or racism or growing up in a war zone, as a child, your only powers, since you're not an adult who can drive a car, make money, buy a gun, listen to the news, your powers are psychic powers. Your intuition is heavily heightened. So many empaths and intuitives and psychics are heavily damaged people. So you'll hear stories, psychologists will tell these stories too, of growing up in an alcoholic family. The psychologist did. I think Alice Miller tells this story in Drama, The Gifted Child, that she could tell when her dad would be home, like within, he'll be home in an hour or 2 hours, she knew. And she could also tell whether she needed to be completely out of sight because he was coming home raging mad and was going to beat her and her mother up, or if he was going to come home and fall asleep, or if he was going to come home and be in a good mood. She knew this all psychically before he ever opened the door, because that had to be developed to save her life as a child. So out here in this area, every healer, psychic, telepath person I've met, and I haven't met them all, has trauma, and that's why they're gifted. And none of them have done any psychological work on themselves. So they haven't addressed their childhood, they don't address their overeating, they don't address their strange relationships at home, they don't address the generational trauma that's being acted out by their children. In big cities, the healers and psychics I've met, they've worked on themselves. They've gone to therapy, they've done self-help, they've joined 12-step meetings, and they're very comfortable with talking about being a survivor of incest or coming from an alcoholic family. So they've done their own work on themselves, the work that they're teaching other people. Kind of a double-edged gift, because you turn out super psychic, but you're also super screwed up on the human plane if you've had trauma and you don't work on it.
Yeah, and working on that is pretty difficult, takes a lot of time and practice. Yeah.
Yes and no. It's kind of like saying, wow, getting healthy takes a lot of time and practice. But after a while, Staying healthy becomes habitual.
Okay.
So the same thing, living healthy, like if you follow the steps in a 12-step program, when you first work the program, it's hell. And it's about 1.5 to 2 years to really work the 12 steps through one time. But then at the end, there's maintenance, which is that every day you do inventory and amends. And every day you do a little meditation. But in the beginning, when people say something's hard in the beginning, when you first started smoking cigarettes, you worked really hard to become a cigarette addict. When you started drinking, you went out of your way. You robbed money from your parents. You got people to buy you booze. You got drunk. You threw up. You hid it. You thought about when you were going to drink again. You would think about how much to drink. And could you drink in the car? I mean, your whole life would be around drinking. And yet people didn't see that as hours and hours of work and focus and planning and money spent. But then when you start healing, it's the same thing. It's going to be a shit ton of work in the beginning until it becomes a lifestyle. Like fitness, like eating well, it becomes a lifestyle. But in the beginning, oh my God, I got to go to the gym, and I was there for like 2 hours, which means I'm not scrolling for 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And I am a little Thor, and I felt terrible because I'm fat, and I'm at the gym, and all this new stuff. I get a new puppy. They are a royal pain in the ass for the first year or two. And I'm like, why did I get a dog again? But then it's great. So we always invest a lot of time and energy. We just are used to our old bad habits. If I've been self-medicating to not remember trauma, I didn't track all the hours and time I spent dodging the trauma. Any new habit in the beginning eats you alive, but then it becomes a new habit and it's effortless, pretty much.
That reference to eating, that sounds like a common coping mechanism, but if there's feelings or people get triggered by things, is that kind of, how is that similar or different than changing like a physical external habit versus changing a reaction or a, I don't know, psychological behavior?
Give me an example. I'm not sure what you're asking.
So for me, I am really kind of afraid of the opposite sex.
Mm-hmm.
And I still am learning and figuring out what that comes from and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So how would that be different, working to change that compared to something like eating? I don't know if that makes sense.
So how would you improve compared to someone who overeats? How would they improve by not eating so much?
Yeah, the difficulty in that, how difficult can it get? I'm trying to understand the mechanics of, I don't know, psychology or this stuff that happens, because I noticed that for me it's very rational, to me at least, and it has kind of like a mind of its own. And so I wonder sometimes if I try to change that, how difficult is it? How much, what behaviors is it going to take to change? How long? Stuff like that. I guess it depends on each scenario, right?
In this case, we're kind of talking about apples and oranges,
Okay.
because eating is an addiction.
Yeah.
And you with the opposite sex is more of an issue about how you feel about yourself plus social skills.
Okay.
Having social skills. So the benefit of an addiction, I had a sugar addiction at one point. I also had a drug addiction at one point, but the sugar addiction was more interesting to me. So, because it was, not considered a real problem by anybody. But it was sugar. It wasn't heroin, wasn't meth or anything. So I didn't want to deal with depression or fear. So I had a huge sugar habit. So my whole day was, I'd wake up in the morning, don't eat any sugar. I'm not going to eat any sugar. I'm going to make a good lunch. So I go to work, I'm not eating sugar. So my whole day was about don't eat sugar. And by the end of the day, I couldn't take it anymore. I'd go out and buy like a giant package of peanut M&Ms and eat them. Now I'm sick from eating them because I overate them, because instead of eating them all day long, I waited to the end of the day because my whole day was thinking about do not eat sugar. At the end of the day, I eat the sugar. Now I'm sick. So now I'm thinking about how do I stop being sick? Ugh, now I can't get any sleep. So I'm not sleeping well. And I get up in the morning and I feel like shit because I ate sugar. So now I'm not going to eat any sugar. Those are my days. And it takes up all my time, energy, and focus. So there's no room for that depression or anxiety or fear to come in. It's medication. Sick medication is not good, but it worked. So to me, every addiction, yes, there's a physical component. Yes, there is a neurological component. I don't mean to belittle that. And it's when you're an addict, at some point you have to address it from that perspective. But I think I want to say that I believe the cause of every addiction is so that I can obsessively have to manage something I can control, like eating sugar or not eating sugar, as opposed to feeling something I can't control, because I can't make that depression go away. It's not external, it's in me. It's a monster in me. This, I can go, well, I didn't eat chocolate for 2 days. It's manageable, it's concrete, it's not a monster. It doesn't own me the way depression or fear or anxiety might own me.
Yeah.
So I think every addiction, food, workaholism, sexual addiction, all of that, we do it as a way to self-soothe. But then it does turn into a monster and it owns us. The problem then with addiction is once you stop it, what you used it for to cover up or to get away from is going to come up and get you.
Yeah.
So that's why it's really hard to stop addiction, and that's why you see a lot of relapse, because not only am I stopping the behavior, feelings that cause me to chase that behavior in the first place are going to come and get me because the dragon was just sleeping, not dead. That's why it's really hard. Now, things like low self-esteem, afraid to be the opposite sex, lack of self-confidence, shyness, introvertedness in an extroverted society. This is all learning new skill sets. And to me, there's 2 ways to work on it simultaneously. One is shifting our energy, getting more and more comfortable with what's inside of us, and then psychological tools to actually do new behaviors and take little baby steps. And we can't really work on those until the timing is right, if that makes sense. And when is the timing right? The person always knows.
Yeah.
Like there was a time when I suddenly went, I need to learn small talk. I was just ready. I need to learn how to chit chat and be charming and get along in just inane conversations, because that's what people do to get to know each other. They don't just jump right in and go, did you have a dysfunctional childhood? Which is like how I like to start a conversation, right?
Yeah.
So I actually was working for someone in the entertainment industry who was charming and talked to everybody about everything. And she was a really nice, authentic person. She wasn't, a fluffy idiot. And I asked her if I could mirror her, if I could shadow her, if she would teach me small talk and how to flirt and chat and be fun to be around. And she did. She's a lot younger than me. She also taught me how to wear makeup, and she taught me how to dress to be cute and fun and fluffy. And it was fun. It was great. And I also bought books on jokes, and I used to write jokes down on index cards. And when I had to go to a social event or a Hollywood event, I'd keep them in my pocket, and I'd literally run to the bathroom and refresh my memory. And then I'd go out and do small talk, and if I got stuck, I had a joke to tell. And it worked. So it was cool. But I had to get in that mindset where I was okay enough to be ready to do that. And that was a very human skill, and I needed it. I still kind of suck at it. So I'm not good at small talk out here because the culture out here is so different than who I am. So.
Yeah, timing, I think definitely, that's a good point too.
It just becomes, at some point you just like, I gotta learn this.
Yeah.
It just happens. So
Okay. So going back to your practice, you've said from what I recall that your whole life you worked spiritually only on the side, and more recently, like within the last 10 years or so, made it your full-time job. Do you like doing it for a living compared to when it was just on the side, or?
no, God, no. I love being what I call a secret agent, which is I would do readings as a professor in class when I was giving feedback to students or helping them with their classes and what was going on. And I trained a lot of professors, so I would use it then. And I would meditate before every class. I would sit in the toilet and get my energy aligned, and then I would kind of feel the energy of the class that day. And then I would send that energy into the class before I even entered. And then I would read the energy of the class. And sometimes I would come in and just go, oh, guys, what's going on? And everybody would be like, ugh, like the whole class. And I said, okay, throwing out the lesson plan. We're doing this instead. And we do something completely different. And I love that. I love doing that. And then people would come to me for readings by word of mouth, which means they knew something about my teacher and that path and the Eastern path. So it was pretty effortless. And I didn't have to think about building a business, saying a cliffhanger at the end so somebody would come back again for another reading. So yeah, going into business myself the first 2 years, hell, absolute hell.
Wow.
Absolute hell. People wanted to be me, so they would compete. They would try to bring me down. They would challenge me in public. They would hand out business cards in classes. They would start teaching in the class like that one woman did in front of my teacher.
Yeah.
They would say, well, what I think and the way it really should be. And I didn't know what to do with this. I was shocked. So there was one person, Tina Foran from Holistic Registry, who ran a metaphysical bookstore and was in the business end of metaphysics in the New Age movement industry. So I would call her up and go, this person did this. What, like a naive little child. I'd go, what do you do? First of all, she'd go, yeah, they do that. And I go, but they're spiritual people. She goes, yeah, right. I said, well, what do you do? She goes, throw their ass out. I was like, what? She goes, throw them out. And then she would tell me her own horror stories, which to this date, we still have that relationship. She still has the same thing. She'll run a group. She was telling me, and there was supposed to be a speaker there, and so there's somebody there, and she's talking to everybody and getting everybody into the subject, and she thought this was the speaker. She had never met the speaker. She found out it was one of the participants, like taken over.
Yeah.
And Tina had to get her like, shut up and sit down. This is the speaker here. So I have zero business brain, zero idea how to market. And I am an introvert unless I have like a task, then I can be extroverted. So the networking I had to do and psychic fairs I went to, I would say every month I was ready to quit and just like go work on Home Depot or something.
Yeah.
And the universe then would give me a miracle, some miracle. Somebody would say, oh, you just saved me with that reading, or all of a sudden I'd have 10 people in the class instead of 4. And I'd go, okay, I'll give it another week. That's how it was for 2 years. Plus calling Tina a lot and crying. And even to date, yeah, it's just, I guess with business, you need to revamp it and remarket every couple of years. I don't know how to do that. Yeah. You're helping me. I just don't know how to do that stuff. And plus I'm in an area where I should have never succeeded in the first place because there's so many fundamental Christians out here and very little really spiritual things here, and all the New Age people out here are very New Age and not into psychology at all, very much into kind of the Christian-based New Age of if you have negative thoughts, then you'll manifest negative things in your life, that sort of thing. So, much preferred being a secret agent, where I had a salary, I had a job, and all the extra stuff was just out there, and the students that recognized what was happening would always stay after class and talk to me and notice that things were different. I wasn't teaching normally, and that was just pure joy. That was just really fun. So yeah, this is hard for me.
Yeah, full-time business is a ton of work to keep up and have it sustain you as well. So, and you did it more naturally, kind of on the side for a much longer time too, right?
Decades, yeah, and I had no idea the egos and the narcissism in the New Age industry, because it's not like I'm selling, window shades. There's competition for that, but this is, my gifts are bigger and better than your gifts. I'm going to come to your class and show you that I am more psychic than you are. It's like, oh my God, help me.
Yeah, and with everyone ranging from psychics to extraterrestrial to coaches, life coaches, I'm sure what do you do to keep up with that, or how's that been to kind of not compete, but like?
Well, it's a big deal. One of the problems is I remember talking to Liang in the 80s about being a life coach, and you're like, what the hell is that? It didn't even exist then. I can't be a life coach now because you need to get a certification. I did horse workshops before there was a horse industry. Now you need to get a degree in it or a certification. Now there's a big push by the state of California for wellness coaches. I can't be a wellness coach because you need a degree or a certification. So all these things that I learned before they existed. And yeah, now I am, let's say, outdated, and I can't grandfather in. So somebody who's been a life coach because they did an 18-month program and they have a perky personality, they will be hired and be a life coach. Somebody with 40 years of experience, I can't be a life coach officially. I can't do any of those things officially. So yeah, it's wild. But I also have to go to this place that Spirit put me in this business. Spirit will take me out if that's what's meant to be and give me the next thing to do, and that's okay. So I just try to do what I like doing and stick to my integrity about it and leave it at that.
Yeah, I bet that's tough to make a living out of that, because you're very authentic. You are not swayed by what the commercial world is doing, so.
I'm not fun compared to singing bowls and vision quests, and yeah, I'm not. But therapists have the same problem too. Therapy isn't fun, and a lot of people come see someone like me, at least out here, rather than go to a therapist, because out here there's not much belief in psychology. Out here, if you go to see a therapist, it means that you must have a mental health issue. But if you go to see a psychic, it must mean you have a gift. So a lot of times people come to see me and I'm not doing anything mystical. I'm doing psychology, pure psychology. And I also assumed there was a reason I had to go into business for myself, for my own evolution, something about building up my own self-esteem, etc. And it didn't happen in an area of the country where there was any support for being in this kind of work. This didn't happen in Sedona or San Francisco or New York or LA. It happened out here in the Inland Empire, which all the other counties call themselves Orange County and LA County, but this is the Inland Empire.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, different vibe out here.
It is a different vibe, yeah. So maybe one more question and...
Okay, yeah. So What about why do people want to become commercially psychics, healers, new age practitioners, or even therapists or pastors?
My mother said something really great to me when I was a community organizer and a revolutionary, working for people of color and what we would call underrepresented minorities in this country. I was living among the people I was working with. And there was actually a period of about 4 years where I wasn't really around any white people at all. And she said to me, remember, the people you're working with are coming out of decades of oppression. So they're not going to be the most mentally healthy people you've met. In other words, they're coming out of abuse, racism, poverty, violence. It's like saying somebody who comes back from the Vietnam War with post-traumatic stress and pretending they're a war hero. There's nothing wrong with them.
Yeah.
No, they may be a war hero, but they're also hugely traumatized. And until that traumatized part is balanced out somehow, you've got both, and you're working with dynamite. And I never forgot that she said that. It was so insightful because I'm trying to work with, First Nation peoples that have been destroyed, systematically destroyed, genocide, the children taken from homes, put in white foster schools, forced to give up their language, their culture. I'm working with women that have been raped, men who have been emasculated, can't get a job, who used to be warriors. These are not your normal, well-adjusted, white middle-class people.
Yeah.
So I also we talked later about people who become therapists. And a lot of people, I did notice this when I was a lot younger, and this is why I didn't want to be in psychology. I didn't get a PhD until I was 60. I did not want to work in the field of psychology. A lot of people I saw, and I still see this, they discovered they were really screwed up. And then they worked on themselves, and now they want to be a psychologist because they want to give to others what happened to them and how they got through it.
Okay.
That's the healthy version. But then I see a lot of people who wake up and find out they're an alcoholic, or mostly that they're like a codependent people pleaser. And now they want to work in the field of helping people, but they haven't really healed their codependency. So to me, people who go into religion, the New Age industry, and very often a lot of therapists, not all, but a great deal. My mother did this. She didn't work on herself very much. She became a therapist, and that way she was able to deflect a lot of her feelings onto clients and kind of soothe herself by soothing them. So I think there's a lot of people who have a lot of emotional distress who go into the helping industries as a way to self-soothe rather than doing some of the really hard work on themselves. So I'll see people like, now they're a social worker, but their husband's still an alcoholic and their kid's still on drugs and they're still overeating, or they're still addicted to social media, and they don't have a practice of their own. They're not seeing a therapist, or they're not doing a spiritual practice. So I'm always very wary. If I need someone to help me, I want to know who's helping me. I want to know, did you have a cocaine habit? What is your marriage like? What are your challenges? And if they can't talk about it, that says to me they're not working on themselves. If I say to somebody, well, you're a little OCD there, and they're like, no, I'm not, and they are, and they're in the helping industry, I'm going, why is this person getting so touchy?
Yeah.
If somebody says to me, which they do, you're too blunt, you're too hard on people, I go, you're right. And I'm a work on progress in that. I grew up in New York, I'm Russian descent, and I'm a Scorpio or Sagittarius, depending on which astrology system. When I try to be diplomatic, I'm tolerable. I'm not good yet. I may never be good. So does it hurt when I hear that? Sure. Is it true? Yeah. Can I hear it? Yeah, I can. Unless someone's being vicious, and then, I'm going to shut that down. You don't get to punish me for things. You can bring it up, right? I was talking to a therapist person who also worked with my teacher, and at one point I said something like, this person was saying how well recognized they were by my teacher. And I said, yeah, great. And there's a little bit of ego in there too.
Yeah.
Like, why is it like my teacher feels this way about me means such a big deal, as opposed to you feel this way about you? And what I said, I hoped a little gently, but probably wasn't, was this: he says that to a lot of people. Like, I know at least 8 other women he said that to. And there's, I think there's a reason he says that to people. Like, you could be doing my work. And then, people stay on the path a lot longer, and they probably could do his work if he's saying that. And her response later was, you're lucky I have a strong ego saying that to me. And that to me was a little red flag of like, if that's a trigger point, you haven't really done a lot of shadow work. Shadow work is not just what other people did to me to traumatize me, but all the dark thoughts inside of me that I have about myself. Like, if somebody says to me, you are a mean bitch, I'm going to laugh, because I'm not a mean bitch. I'm a lot of other things, but I'm not that, right? But if that triggers me and I get mad, that means I do think I'm a mean bitch. I haven't worked on it, and your comment just hurt me, because it's already a sore point for me. It's like when a masseuse massages your leg and all of a sudden you go, ow. The masseuse didn't suddenly go like that to you. The masseuse just did this, and you went, ow, because you have the boo-boo.
Yeah.
So that's another thing, with triggers. To me, that's a sign of where more work needs to be done. If my feelings get hurt by something, that means I don't believe something about myself inside of me. And when you said that, it hurt that spot in me that doesn't believe in me. The more healed I am, the less triggered I get.
That's fascinating. And so, working on meditation and becoming more aware of those deep feelings can lead to that kind of healing and growth, right?
Yes. And I find a lot of people get into the healing industry in order to not work on those feelings. And that doesn't mean they can't be a good therapist or something. I know therapists have a lot of good technique and stuff, and they're really good. But for me personally, I think because I pick up so much from people, I need to work with somebody who works on themselves. Otherwise, I can feel when they're doing technique, and that annoys me. I don't like it, and I don't trust it. I also think that if you work that way in the helping industry, your intuition is muffled. Because if I'm trying not to feel pain, that means I'm trying not to feel something. And you can't just not feel one thing. If you're trying not to feel something, that means you're going to have to kind of blanket a lot of other feelings too. Because feelings aren't usually standalone. They usually have a lot of other things attached to them. Memories, sensations, smells, other feelings. So if I say, I'm going to just shut down this feeling, no, you're not. You can't. It's like saying, I'm just not going to use this finger. You're going to have to spend so much time not using this finger and figuring out how your hand works, etc.
Yeah.
So if, for myself, just because I'm hypersensitive in that area, and I can feel when people are lying. I don't always know what they're lying about, but I can feel when they're lying. I can feel when they're dissociating. I can feel when they're checking out. I can feel when they're being mechanical. I have to work with someone who is truly on a path of healing for themselves, whatever version. It can be Christian, religious, it can be some new agey thing, because there's a lot of things out of everything that work. And you could take bits and pieces from every religion, all the new age practices, and work with them. you put them into an organization, that to me is when it gets a little sticky for me. So I'm always, very curious. If it's a therapist, I want to know, what have you worked on? What are you working on? I want to see if they get triggered when I say certain things. If it's a pastor, religious, well, we know about, all the sexual abuse that's gone on in the churches, and even in Buddhist temples years ago, there's been, cases like that. That says to me, you've got people with problems. Because if you are really working on yourself, there's no way you can get an erection around a child. You just can't. Your brain doesn't go there. And it's hard because in the mental health profession, there's a lot of issue about disclosure. There's a lot of don't tell your clients too much, don't let them know too much. And in the new age industry, where people are competing and criticizing and attacking, especially with social media, if you reveal too much, you open yourself up to attacks. People can turn around and say, oh, she said she used drugs, so she might still be using drugs. She's a drug addict. She's not, a helper person. So it's a really, to me, complex path to walk.
Okay.
So, thank you for doing this.
Yeah.